First thing I'd like to say, and council will know it because they've heard it enough times from me, the local plan for Warwick District is probably one of the most important things and one of the most important sets of decisions that this council will make for a generation. I'm not kind of deliberately overplaying that because although typically people think the local plan is about housing numbers and all the opposition to that, it is actually about all of our futures. It's about all of the aspects of our life, what policies and how we're going to cater for the future. How, importantly, because I will actually put a challenge to you all, how we're going to cater for the generation which isn't here tonight. Look amongst you, the future generation actually isn't here. Future ratepayers and future taxpayers are not here tonight, but this plan will materially, very materially affect their future. And that's our challenge. So that's what it's about. Now, we start a consultation, start on the 1st of June, runs through to 27th of July, so roughly about a two-month period. Whole series of kind of meetings, so all of the community forums will have a presentation, I would say not just from me, but from other senior officers of the council. There will be a whole series of meetings, whole series of exhibitions. It's all online as well, so 24/7 if you really are into the local plan and you want to spend every day, every single minute, it's there for you to be able to look at and to be able to comment upon. And I would say that because this is so important, this consultation is important because it is your opportunity to shape both your future and the future of the future generations. And not many of us really get that kind of chance at a very local level to do that. And I think the councillors here would say, this is not a stitch-up, this is not something which is, well, he says it's a consultation, but actually, we all know it's a done deal, smoke-filled brews, or rather, I suppose these days it's non-smoke-filled brews, and we're not allowed to have that these days, you don't smoke outside. But it isn't. There are issues which actually cannot avoid, and they will always be there, but the answers to them are actually still open. There is the opportunity for the debate to actually see whether or not there are other ways we might address the issues that we are actually faced with as a community. So I think the councillors would support me in saying this consultation is genuine. We do want you to say something, even if you say we agree with you. What we don't want you to do is go away and say, well, I won't bother. Because I think the future is far too important for apathy. And hopefully, if you accept that, you will actually convey that to your friends and families in the area and encourage them to actually get involved, look at the information and give views. Because if you don't give any views, you have no right to complain later on when things happen that you might not like. So we need you to be involved. That's kind of the key thing. So, if you want us to know the website address, www.warwickbc.gov.uk. Kind of almost literally just off the top. So, the local panel just doesn't materially kind of appear. There are things which form it, do provide context to it. The council itself agreed a set of principles back in December of last year. And that was based upon a whole amount of research and evidence. A lot of that was done about how we think the economy is going to go, how we think that the local population is going to change and grow, and what kind of housing we think we need, and related to that then what kind of community issues and what community facilities do we think we're going to need to cater for a period. So this plan is going to go, I'll try and cover the period from 2011, slightly retrospectively, to 2029, so 18 years. I'll just work it out. By the time we get to the end of the plan period, I'll be 69. That's my Friday. But that's the kind of period we're talking about. It is, though, also framed by the National Planning Policy Framework. I mean, I'm sure that most people, if you've read the papers, kind of over the winter period, the government have produced a draft policy statement condensing down planning policy into 50 pages or whatever it is from, it feels like 10,000, or something like that. That's now been confirmed, and that our local plan has to be in broad conformity with the National Planning Policy Framework. That doesn't mean to say that, oh, well, it's the government's dictating this. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That provides a framework, but it still leaves a lot of latitude for very local decisions about the communities that you live in, and that me and my colleagues actually serve. Some of the issues, if you like, one in terms of the preferred options, what it covers, I've said this isn't just about housing, and please, I know that the press, I know that people will get angst about all of that and think, it's just about housing numbers, it's just about where they will go. But it is about so much more than that. Yes, it is about level of growth. And in a time of austerity and recession, don't we need some growth? It's about where that growth might occur. It's about the housing, it's about the economy, it's about the future of our town centres as well. It's about, and I know that a lot of people will be interested about this, okay, we have all this growth, we put it here, there, right? How on earth, when we face congestion, when we're not quite sure about the adequacy of public transport now, are people going to get around from where they live to where they work, or to where they want to go to shop, or where they want to go to play? So transport is quite a big issue in this as well. And of course it's about the green belt. Roughly speaking, about 80% of Warwick district is within the green belt. I was talking to colleagues to try and estimate, so okay, in the preferred options, we are suggesting that some of the green belt is proposed to be developed. Well, how much of it? So we've got 80% of the district in the green belt. And the rough estimate is, at most, 5% of that is actually materially affected by the proposals in this preferred options. At most. Haven't quite done a specific calculation. But that's the kind of scale that we're talking about. We're not talking about ripping up the green belt. We're not talking about kind of basically covering it with houses or factories or offices. In terms of the actual scale, it's actually on the margins in terms of what we have in terms of our natural environment within the district, which I know everyone highly prizes. And clearly it's very important that we do our utmost to actually keep that prize. But it's also in the wider environmental context of addressing the issues of climate change, and very locally that happens to us in terms of local consequences, is flooding. You may not think of flooding in those terms, but it is one of the consequences of it, and we know, and I know that Councillor Elliott will tell me every time that before it floods and North and South Kenilworth cannot drive past to each other, but there are other parts of the district which have been in the past much more materially affected. Their homes, people's places of work have been very harmfully affected, not just kind of blocking a road. But we have to think of that as well. It's also, though, about general terms, we have kind of safety. Safety, yes, in terms of kind of criminality, or hopefully lack of criminality, but safe just in terms of it's a nice place to be. You feel safe. Kind of the perceptive side of it, not just the actual side. And it's also about actually should be a place where kind of manage it so that it encourages healthy lifestyles. So walking, cycling, enjoying open spaces. Now, in a district which has two castles, which were on the opposite sides of the Civil War, you can guess which side lost. Sorry, but it's your side. We've got a lot of historic environment stuff. But we've got so much, that's kind of coming out of our ear. But we know, again, that's part of, as I said, it's part of the joy of Warwick District, isn't it? When people have chosen to live here, or chosen to stay here, if in fact you were born here, that the kind of character of the area, part of it, is the history. Not just in terms of the social history, but in terms of what you see on an everyday basis. And so the local plan has to be about how we protect that, how we can enhance it wherever possible, and kind of balance that against some of the other demands that we have for growth and so on. Now, the other part of the joy of the area is kind of green stuff. We've got loads of that as well. In fact, I think as a district we've probably got more kind of open green space in our ownership and management than most of the local authorities in the country, believe it or not. So, in Kenilworth, Abbey Fields, in Leamington, Jefferson Gardens, Cumberland Gardens, St Nick's Park in Warwick and so on. But there are lots of actually nature conservation sites in our ownership, which generally maybe the general public don't necessarily know that we own and manage, but they're part of it. And so part of this is about how do we protect that green infrastructure, and how do we actually enhance it, and how in some cases do we actually have more of it. So when there are new developments, we're bringing the green infrastructure alongside it, to kind of match the character, if you like, and extend the character of what we have in this area at the moment. And generally the built environment, that's kind of a challenge. I'm not talking about the historic environment, the kind of really special bits. But in terms of what we might face, how do we make sure that actually we don't kind of kill the golden goose? Is it? on the whole. It's not absolutely perfect, but this area is a pretty nice area to live in. And part of that's a blend of things, the history, the green space, the buildings, with a few exceptions, particularly kind of Leamington. Not too many kind of scars on the landscape in terms of building design. But it's actually how to make sure that that's the case, and how to make sure that where we have problems, we can actually address them and actually improve the quality of the building built in France. So that's kind of, you like the new stuff, the modern stuff, not necessarily about the historical stuff. It's the stuff now, and the stuff we'll build in the future. And in terms of the other thing, culture. That is part of the joy of Warwick District as well. We've got loads of culture too. I mean, because one of those things, we've got lots of tourism. I mean, we in Warwick District are a worldwide destination. You might think, okay, that's just because of Warwick Castle, and that's true. But lots of other people come to this area for a whole raft of reasons, and they spend their money. And that helps to support local shops, local pubs, local cafes, local businesses. And actually, the amount of contribution to the local economy runs into the hundreds of millions of pounds per year. So don't think that's kind of just a few people who get on a coach and kind of go around Warwick within about an hour and may have a cup of tea or coffee just on the way. It is a significant contribution. And part of that is because this is a nice area to live. And if you're going to go and visit somewhere, why would you go and visit somewhere that's a nice area to live? So actually, that's what people do. And we have got such a lot to offer in all sorts of ways. And again, it's how do we make the most of that without killing the proverbial golden goose? It's that kind of balancing act that we have to try and achieve. And that's what the kind of preferred options, we're saying, this is what we think, what do you think? How have we captured that balance right? Come back to flooding and water, because again, we've got a few rivers, seem to have a lot of water. But it does relate back to the kind of climate change issue. But we have to look at that kind of thing. We have to make sure that if we are building new developments, we're not creating new problems. You can look at some of the post-war development and see that where developments occurred in floodplains, actually what it's built up over time is a problem for somewhere else, probably further down. And in our case, I think it's Tewkesbury. If you go far enough down, that's where all of the flood water from the Severn and the Avon actually hit, usually at the same time. But we have to look at that, we have to care for ourselves in that kind of thing. So the preferred options attempt to kind of cover all of these issues together. Not an easy job, because there are potentially some trade-offs, potentially some kind of dispute points. They don't always easily sit well together, and that's part of the job of, in the sense of the document, is to try and reconcile those things. And part of the consultation process is to test it, to see whether or not that balance is right.